Hi everyone, welcome to WarCan Solutions' first video on how to operate one of our devices we sell. This is an Axpert Inverter operated through the WatchPower app. Let's start with a login page. Here is where you will enter your username and password. If you check the Remember Me box, you don't have to keep entering your username and password. Once you logged in, you will be redirected to the device list page. This page lists all your devices linked to this username and password. Clicking on the device you want to check will open the basic information page. The basic information page is what it is. Information that the system is currently using or doing and what it can manage. Grid voltage is the incoming voltage coming in through the input provided by a generator or external source, also known as utility. We see later on other pages. Grid frequency is the frequency of the input. PV1 input voltage is the voltage coming from the solar input number 1. PV2 input voltage is the voltage coming from the solar input number 2. PV1 and PV2 charging power is the power the solar is using and not necessarily what the maximum power there is. Power is the amount of voltage multiplied by the amount of current flowing through the inputs of PV1 and PV2. Therefore, the voltage is measured all the time depending on how sunny it is. The current is measured in amps by the load currently available and required by the system. This is used to run the output required and/or charge the battery. This totally is dependent on the settings of the output and battery parameter setting we go through later. The battery voltage is the voltage the battery is currently sitting at when charging and/or discharging. The battery capacity is the amount of energy the battery has. This is not accurate because the inverter measures the voltage of the battery and not the actual current available in the battery. The battery charging current is the number of amps being pushed into the battery while charging. An example is if you are charging a battery and the battery is 120 amps per hour. If charging from empty at 30 amps per hour, it will theoretically take approximately 3.5 to 4 hours to fully charge a 120 amp hour battery. The battery discharge current is the number of amps being drawn from the battery while discharging. An example is if you are discharging a battery and the battery is 120 amps per hour. If discharging from full, it will theoretically take approximately 3.5 hours to fully discharge at 30 amps per hour because it must keep 10 to 20% power in the battery. AC output voltage is the outgoing voltage going out through the output provided by the inverter to supply the sources connected to it. AC output frequency is the frequency of the output supplied by the inverter. AC output apparent power is the volt amps flowing through the output supplied by inverter. AC output active power is the power flowing through the output supplied by the inverter. Output load percent is the percentage load the inverter is pushing through the output of the inverter. Our next page is the production information, the type of inverter and firmware on the inverter. The next page is the rated information of the inverter. Here is where all the maximum values are displayed. The following page is the history page. Here is where every event of the inverter is recorded in 5-minute increments. How to read this will be in another video to soon follow. The next page after history is the parameter setting page. This is an important setup page which should not be used if you do not fully understand it. The first setting is the output source priority. You have number 1, utility solar battery, which is utility will provide power to the loads as first priority. Solar and battery provide to the loads only when utility power is not available. Number 2 is the solar utility battery. Solar energy provides power to the loads as first priority. If solar energy is not sufficient to power all connected loads, utility energy will supply power to the loads at the same time. Number 3, solar battery utility. Solar energy provides power to the loads as first priority. If solar energy is not sufficient to power all connected loads, battery energy will supply power to the loads at the same time. Utility only provides power to the loads when battery voltage drops to either low level warning voltage or the voltage set at back to grid voltage on battery parameters setting page. The other output settings should not be changed unless by an installer. The next page is the battery parameter setting page. This page should also not be altered except by an installer. The only one the user can play around with is the charging source priority. Number 1 is solar first. Solar energy will charge battery as first priority. Utility will charge battery only when solar is not available. Please note, if solar is not enough, the battery will charge very slowly. This is not recommended for cloudy days. Your battery may not be fully charged at sunset, especially if system is set to solar battery utility or solar utility battery. Rather use solar plus utility on cloudy days, which is an overcast day. Number 2 is solar plus utility. Solar energy and utility will charge the battery at the same time. This can cause your utility bill to be high if maximum AC charging current is set very high. Number 3, only solar charging permitted. Solar energy will be the only charger source whether utility is available or not. This is not really recommended. Back to grid voltage is the voltage you set when you want the battery to stop supplying the load when this setting is reached. Back to discharge voltage is when you want the battery to start supplying the load when solar battery utility is selected. The other settings should not be altered unless you fully understand the technical aspects of your inverter. Changes to these other settings could render your warranty void. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoy the use of your Axpert Inverter supplied and installed by us.